This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Jackson Flickinger and Corey Walsh. And you know what? Kobe Altman, the absolute madman, made a move at the trade deadline. The last time he did that, we got Caris LeVert. This time, he took away Caris LeVert. We're going to talk all about this trade that the Cavs just made. We acquired DeAndre Hunter for Caris LeVert, Georges Niang, 3 second-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. We're waiting to see if there's any more details, but right now, that's the deal that we got. So we're going to break down our thoughts on the addition of DeAndre Hunter, as well as what we gave up and some of the implications for that and what it means for this rotation. But before we get started with all of that, I want to say, if you enjoy the Junkyard Pod and you want to help us out, make sure you're following on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow us on social media. Do all that stuff. All right, let's get right into this now because I know everyone's excited to talk about it. At least I am. Jackson, initial thoughts. The Cavs get DeAndre Hunter. What are your thoughts on Hunter himself? We'll talk about the package that we gave up, but just DeAndre Hunter as a player, where do you stand on this?
So I'm probably not as high on Hunter as most of everyone else, at least as not as much as Tony Pesta. But I think the most important thing that Hunter provides is positional versatility. He's somebody who you can play small ball 4 with. And the only other person you could do that on the roster before the trade was Dean Wade. And I think that is really going to help you spread the floor and, match up against teams like the Thunder, like the Celtics when they go small. It's not a coincidence that I think the Cavs have lost their last 4 games against the Rockets, Thunder, and Celtics. In all those games, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen weren't playing at their very best at the same time, and the Cavs needed to downshift in all those games. And, they should have won both games against the Rockets, but they didn't have the optionality to play a different style. Now they do have that optionality. And I think that's the biggest thing that Hunter provides.
Corey, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Jackson. I think they made this move in mind with trying to compete with trying to make it so they're more flexible against the taller teams in the league. And a lot of the downshifts that we have seen have not necessarily worked out. We've seen them try to make up for that by running zone more, though those haven't been working out, particularly against the Rockets or the Celtics. The zone wasn't necessarily the answer. And I think once they realized they couldn't figure out how to, kind of match up with those teams without some of the little quirks in their lineups, then they realized they got to make a move. I also am not the highest on Hunter compared to the masses online. You would think we just brought LeBron James back from the way that Twitter is reacting, but I'm happy with the move just for what it offers. And Hunter isn't a bad player. And honestly, I know we're going to talk about the package later, but if the package was what was initially rumored, I probably would be more upset. But for what we paid for getting Hunter, I don't have a strong angst against the move whatsoever.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys have mentioned it already. Just the games that we've had this season against Boston, against OKC, Houston, even the 2 losses to Atlanta, you could tell when the Cavs went up against a team that had a lot of wings and could kind of punish those in-between positions. You felt it. If you're the Cavs, you really felt it. They tried their best to kind of pivot and find other solutions. The zone against Boston being one of against Houston and OKC as well, but the zone being one of those attempts at just trying to find a way to hide the fact that you don't have a wing. The difference is now, if you do have Hunter out there and you do try a zone for whatever reason, he's actually going to be a little bit better at covering ground than someone like Georges Niang, who we'll talk about the package that we gave up in a second. But Hunter, Jackson said it, Corey said it, he gives you the positional versatility that this team has been missing for years. I mean, this has been the one major unchecked box that they have had since getting Donovan Mitchell. Everyone with eyes could see you need a small forward. Whether you keep the core 4 together or you split them up, whatever you do, you're going to need a wing insurance. And as good as Dean Wade is, he's not always available. So you're going to need a little bit of depth there. And so that's why for me, I'm super hype about this trade because yes, DeAndre Hunter wasn't the best player available. I think Cam Johnson would have been ahead of him in my list, but he's still a legit win. When you look at the guys who we've been linked to in the past, it was either guys who weren't going to move the needle enough, like Dorian Finney-Smith, and he's playing good in LA, so it's no hate to him, but just guys on a smaller scale. Danny Green as an option that we tried, right? Like guys who weren't going to move. Danny Green much worse than Dorian Finney-Smith, let's be clear. But the point that I'm making is either smaller moves that didn't really move the needle, or the bigger moves would have cost too much, right? Like Brandon Ingram for Jarrett Allen being something that was floated out in the summer. This move, for the price that you got him at, again, I know I'm the highest one on Hunter of the group here, but I mentioned on the last pod, 6'8" forward, 7'2" wingspan. He's broken out with Atlanta's second unit as an offensive player. He's averaging 19 points on a career best, or not a career best. The 19 points are a career best. Not sure about the 3-point percentage. 39.3% from the 3-point line. Okay, so 2 career bests there. The question and the concern that I completely understand is that an outlier? Is he just having an outlier season? Is he really, this efficient on offense? Are we just seeing a fluky year where he's shooting the lights out? We'll have to see. If he's turned the corner offensively, then this is a really great move for the Cavs because for all the concerns that you may have with his defense, I said it on the last pod again, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I think in this context with the Cavs, whether he's in the starting lineup or just playing next to one of Mobley or Allen, I think he's going to look much better as a team defender than he did in Atlanta. And I also think there's more incentivized. I think he's more incentivized to work relentlessly on the glass and try to be a difference maker on the little things, the small factors of the game, because he might be competing for a championship here. Whereas in Atlanta, he's on a play-in team. Why are you going to work your ass off on defense just to watch Trae Young dribble the ball for 20 seconds on the other end? Now he's on a different team, different context. I think whatever the best version of DeAndre Hunter is, I think you're going to see it in Cleveland. So that's why I'm very excited about this.
Maybe. I mean, I do think that defense comes down to effort a lot and that you have to exert yourself on the defensive end to, be a good defender. And, you're right about all the incentives not really being there when he's playing with the Hawks. But Hunter isn't somebody that we've really seen play consistently good defense for any length of time in the NBA. That was what he was supposed to do coming out of college, but that hasn't really translated. So I think that just assuming that he could play better defense is a little dangerous. Not saying that he won't, just saying that it's not a guarantee that just switching teams is going to make him play better defense. But, team defenders always look better when you put them in a better team dynamic. And the Cavs are going to have a better team dynamic, especially, when you have Mobley and Allen playing behind you, playing more with Wade. We didn't really talk about the position versatility to go small, but they now kind of have the position versatility to go bigger if they wanted to. You can play a lineup with, obviously you wouldn't start with this, but you can play some lineups with Mitchell at point guard, Hunter at the 2, Wade at the 3, and then your 2 bigs if you really wanted to, maybe late in games when you're holding on to a lead or something like that. So I think that Hunter does give you that. And that's something that this Cavs team didn't have before. You can't really go bigger with LeVert. You're certainly not going bigger with, Niang. So it's those things like that, I think are really helpful in a playoff series.
Yeah, I was going to say that Hunter also just provides the Cavs, obviously, with a traditional wing, which is something that they just haven't had for years upon years between coaching regimes. And also it allows players like Max Strus to kind of be in lineups where he is more in his natural position of shooting guard. It opens up a lot of different options that, frankly, the Cavs just never had the personnel to necessarily do. It just felt like they were constantly having to come up with these obscure and out of the box lineups just to make it kind of fill the gap of not having that traditional wing. And that's where we've seen those shortcomings against teams that typically run bigger. You can't really gimmick your way to matching those types of lineups. So it's going to be interesting to see now that Kenny kind of has the quote unquote ideal wing. Maybe Hunter isn't going to be like a nail hitting the bullseye on what they're expecting, but just having that body in the lineup is something that we just haven't seen. So it'll be interesting to see how Kenny kind of adapts.
Yeah, and to that point, like you mentioned, it may not be the exact perfect bullseye, but let's zoom out here for a second, and we're going to talk about some of the players they gave up. When you look at it, the Cavs now, Dean Wade was basically the only truly interchangeable player they had on the roster. Karis LeVert, Max Strus, George Niang, like it was kind of gimmicky the way that we would try to use them in different positions. Some of them did better than others in those scenarios, right? Like Karis LeVert, give him all the credit in the world for adjusting the way he did during his time in Cleveland. When he first got here, he thought he was going to be the number 2 ball handler. And then we get Donovan Mitchell. Now all of a sudden he's trying to learn how to be a small forward. He's trying to learn to play without the ball. Like, give a lot of credit to Karis LeVert, and I hope that he succeeds in Atlanta and the rest of his career. But DeAndre Hunter, again, is he perfect? No. But when you look at who we were trying to fill this gap with, he's way closer to the bullseye than the others. So that's why I'm so excited about it. And also, before I forget, before we transition here, and we can always come back and talk more about Hunter himself, but 13th best catch and shoot player in the NBA this season. Again, is that an outlier? Is he going to revert back to normal at some point? Can't say for sure, but he's been a relatively good shooter throughout his career. The defense is the thing that we'll have to see. But I think it's going to work out. So I want to talk about the players that Cavs have gave up in that deal now. And I already mentioned Karis LeVert. Of course, George Niang, fan favorite. Look, I want to give Niang his flowers too. They brought him in to shoot the three-pointer. And you know what? This season, he shot the three-pointer really well. Didn't really bring anything else outside of good vibes in the locker room, which we appreciate. But listen, I mentioned the trickle-down effect at the start of this episode. One of the biggest trickle-down effects is now there's no scenario where Kenny is going to have to play Niang in a playoff series. It's not going to happen now, no matter what. We'll see Tristan Thompson before it gets, because Niang's gone. So there's just you never have to worry about that anymore.
Thank you for clarifying.
Never say never.
You got to let it sink in. It's never going to happen now. We don't have to worry about it, Cavs fans. We're free. We're absolutely free from the shackles of Niang, who played like 25 minutes the other night. It's nice. It's nice to know that I can rest assured that Niang's not going to be out there. And that's the last mean thing I'm going to say about Niang, okay? Because I hope that he succeeds in Atlanta as well. But strictly upgrading right there, huge for me. Karis LeVert, another guy who I didn't really trust come playoff time. So DeAndre Hunter, 4 Karis LeVert and Niang, plus the 3 second-round picks and the 2 swaps. Jackson, how do you feel about the package that the Cavs gave up to get Hunter?
So I think that on one hand, you have to really like it because you kept your best future assets, which I would value as like Jalen Tyson, the 2031 first, and then Isaac Okoro as like the best movable, outside of the core 4 that you could realistically move for another upgrade. So I think the Cavs have a chance to do that in the summer if the right deal comes along. I'm still looking at you, Cam Johnson, who did not get moved because, you'll eventually get moved for something that Sean Marks doesn't think is worthy of you. But, it's a chance that he's still out there. And I think that, if the Cavs wanted to do that, maybe in the summer. Anyways, so from that standpoint, I think it's really good. But there is an element that I don't really like about this move. And that's like, you are losing Karis LeVert. And I think that you significantly downplayed Karis LeVert's importance to this team, especially as a ball handler. You talking about you didn't trust him in the playoffs. Well, in the play-in games in 2022, when he was first brought here, he was very good. Against the Knicks,
changed since then, to be fair.
Against the Knicks,
even the Knicks,
against the Knicks, he was really good as well. He was probably the only player on the team that didn't play down, like they played to their level of competition. And last year in the playoffs, he was very helpful against the Celtics until he got injured. So it's not like Karis LeVert was one of your better playoff players, and he was. Now you only have 3 ball handlers on the team that you trust in a playoff setting. I know that we talked about how good DeAndre Hunter is as a shooter and like a play finisher. He's also one of the worst passers in the league, one of the worst playmakers. He's in the 10th percentile in assist to usage rate for forwards, which is crazy. His assist percentage has always been very, very low. This is somebody who's not going to provide any additional playmaking. He doesn't create for himself off the dribble. So you really lost that part of Karis. Karis LeVert could do that. Karis LeVert did a good job of setting up his teammates, getting the bigs involved That's all gone now. So you're really relying on Ty Jerome. Is Ty Jerome going to be able to do that in the playoffs? He hasn't done that consistently at any point in his career, especially not the playoffs. So I don't know if that's, like you're really losing something in the short term. And I think that that's kind of overlooked because people get frustrated with Caris LeVert's inconsistencies, but he is a really good player.
I was going to say, even in Caris's worst shooting games, he's been one of the players that we always say the Cavs don't have a lot of players that are multi-dimensional. But Caris has always been someone that he's pretty aggressive for boards for a guard. He tries his hardest on defense. He really stepped up as a defender in his time in Cleveland. I think he really, as we've said, he's bought into his role, and that came with having to play defense. And as a passer, he really has. Caris has his moments where we joke about what Caris gets rolled today, but when Caris is dialed in as a passer, he really was a game changer for the Cavs, and he had so much versatility. Hunter is interesting in that sense. I'd like to think that some of his shortcomings in the passing come from being in a Trae Young offense where he is the epicenter of the entire offense and everything revolves around him. And you'd have to think with the way that the Cavs offense is operating this season, with the way that the ball kind of flies around and it doesn't really get stuck anywhere, that this would be his best chance to kind of unlock something. And I think Caris even though technically it's a different coaching staff at the time, you have to think that the Cavs have shown an ability to kind of allow players to kind of develop from different systems. I mean, Max Strus is a hard example because he came from Miami where he kind of played similarly to how Cleveland's trying to use him. But I think Hunter's set up for a way, and this would have been true with Cam Johnson too. I don't even think this is a Hunter thing, but whoever, as we've said, he's coming in as the fifth guy in this lineup. So it's not like we're saying if he can't bear the load that he's going to have, he's screwed, because they're just going to ask him to do small things, and anything that he kind of shows is a bonus.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to stray away from the pack here today in the Junkyard Pod. You guys, what you said about Caris LeVert is true. He has been helpful. I want to give him a lot of credit, but I've been completely out for a little while on running it back with Caris. I think the Caris LeVert experience, it was time for it to end in Cleveland. I don't think the playmaking that he provided is as valuable as what DeAndre Hunter is going to provide, is just a legit interchangeable wing, the catch and shoot ability, the ability to play without the ball. Caris LeVert, yes, he was helpful back in that play-in game, but now we have Ty Jerome and Max Strus, two guys
he was helpful last year. He was helpful in the playoffs.
I think he was pretty bad in the playoffs last year.
No,
he shot. Well, I'm looking at it right now, and I remember being really frustrated with him last year in the playoffs. He shot 18% from the 3-point line in the playoffs, 43% from the field, 2 assists to 1.5 turnovers a game. The dude was really, really damaging when he wasn't hitting his shots. And I just had to get off that if I'm the Cavs. You can't trust him with the variance that he plays with. I just couldn't trust him anymore. He was so bad on defense. When his shot wasn't falling, it was a complete disaster on both ends.
This is the best year we've seen from Caris LeVert. Last year was not his best year, and he was still really helpful for a team that couldn't create a shot outside of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. And on top of that, Darius Garland, we've talked about why he was bad, but he was very bad that year. They had nobody who could create off the dribble in any capacity. And that's
changed now. I think that's changed a lot.
You still have the same players. You're just putting a lot.
You add Ty Jerome, you add Darius Garland back, really, because he wasn't himself last year. The offense has gone from wherever they were last year, I'm blanking, but to the first in the NBA. Mitchell and Garland are having the synergy that we haven't seen from them. I think DeAndre Hunter fits in perfectly there, and Evan Mobley being able to handle the ball a little bit more helps as well. So long term, yes, I don't want to pretend that Caris LeVert is some scrub. He's a good player, and I don't think there's a huge margin of. I don't think there's a huge talent gap between him and Hunter, but I think Hunter's fit with this team is infinitely better. And for me, I was just so ready to get off of LeVert because I think you're going to get enough out of Strus and Jerome in terms of ball handling and secondary playmaking. And having Dean Wade be your backup 3 or even Okoro, I'm completely okay with that. I loved Caris LeVert. I was ready for him to go. So for me, this didn't hurt losing Caris LeVert to get DeAndre Hunter is the only point I'm trying to make.
I think that you can say, like, I think that going from Hunter to LeVert is a upgrade, especially with what this team needs. But I do think that there is a world where, like, this really hurts the Cavs, where they can't create their own shots. They don't have people that can get the bigs involved. And DeAndre Hunter is another one. Like, the Cavs do have some guys.
He won't. Help
you now have Hunter who's not creating for others. Wade doesn't create for others. Merrill doesn't create for others. So Okoro doesn't create for others. So you just have a list of guys.
No, I'm just kidding.
But, like, you have a list of guys who are going to be in your rotation who aren't getting your bigs involved. And, like, Jarrett Allen's not creating for himself. So, like, it's an important part of this team that I think is easy to overlook in, like, the fact that they don't have a wing. I think that just, like, not having that additional ball handler you are going to feel it unless Ty Jerome is good. And, Ty Jerome, this is just who Ty Jerome is. And if you continue to get this version of Ty Jerome, no one's going to be here in the playoffs saying, like, man, I wish we had Caris LeVert. But if Ty Jerome kind of plays like he did for a good portion of January, we're going to be here like, the Cavs kind of just needed some more on-ball juice.
I still think Max Strus belongs right in that mix too. I think the combination of Jerome and Strus, I feel pretty comfortable with the ball handling depth there. But one more thing real quick, just slight pushback, because I do agree with what you're saying. I want to be clear. I do agree. But I think the issue of if you're not getting the creation out of Garland, Mitchell, or Jerome or Strus, Caris LeVert would help in that scenario. But I kind of think you're already 6 feet under at that point. If Caris LeVert is the only guy creating, as we have seen, unfortunately, in the next series and then the play-in, you're kind of already cooked. So I'm okay with pivoting off that and saying, let's get a legit wing where, we're not going to get beat up on the glass because it's Jarrett Allen and 4 guards in the second unit. We're not going to, we're not trying to make Caris LeVert be this catch and shoot 3-point threat, which he did a good job at for adjusting to that game, but he was never quite consistent. Will DeAndre Hunter be consistent? That's yet to be seen. But this is why I think it's a worthwhile gamble, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile gamble too, but there is a lot of downside, and you're still kind of like, DeAndre Hunter's not solving these rebounding issues. Like,
he could help.
That's something that
I think he helps more than Wade Niang and LeVert. We'll have to see. That's yet to be seen.
Neither one of those are good.
The bar was really low. That's the problem. The bar, you needed to raise it.
Well, but, like, did you actually raise it? I think that's something that we're going to have to see.
I think you did. It just depends on how far you got it up. But he's 6'8", 7'2" wingspan. He's athletic. He's a big dude. Again, maybe he comes out and doesn't even look like he cares, but I think we're going to see him help a lot in that department.
Yeah, we will have to see.
I think this just was a reassurance or more insurance by the front office that this team isn't a Dean Wade injury away from completely imploding, which is what we've kind of seen. We've all been pointing to, like, why are the Cavs so much better when Dean Wade is on the floor versus not playing at all? And it's because they're able to do so much more because he's the only player on the team that can fill those boxes. And DeAndre Hunter doesn't even necessarily check all the boxes that Wade does. Not saying that Wade is a overall way better player than DeAndre Hunter, but the simple fact of the matter is that his skill set is honestly more complete than DeAndre Hunter's is, in my opinion. But we can't just get stuck in a postseason series being like, oh man, we were one. If Dean Wade just stayed healthy in round 2, we could have probably beat the Celtics or at least gave them a good fight, because that's what it was at. Like, that's the territory we were heading towards, in my opinion. Because
I know I said that, like, Hunter gives you the opportunity to go small, but, like, if you're in a playoff series and Hunter is the only opportunity you have to go small and you don't have Wade, you're probably not winning anyways. I think this kind of increases the margins that you have, but you still really do need Wade in those situations because he is a better defender than Hunter by a wide margin. He's a better rebounder by a wide margin. And Hunter is a better offensive player, but as we've seen, for the most part, like, the offense isn't really the issue this season. So I do think that you're still overly reliant on Wade, but you're not as reliant. So, like, I don't want to discount Hunter's contributions and Hunter's ability to let you go small, but I do think that, like, Wade is still a very important part of this team.
Absolutely. I mean, when it's just Dean Wade out there, you see the Cavs click in a way that they don't with any other lineup, basically. Just having him available Yeah, whether it's the starting lineup or a backup big, like you see things click into place that you rarely see in any other lineup. And now you have an alternative there where if Wade's not available, you have someone who you can turn to and he can at least give you a lot of what Wade gives you. I think Hunter's a better player, but it's, we can save that for another discussion. Let's see them play together. Let's see them play a little bit. Let's see what Hunter looks like. Because I think Hunter could be a perfect fit in the starting lineup, but we'll wait until we get some sample size because there's a lot of variables there and a lot of I'm assuming a lot out of Hunter changing some of his style once he comes to Cleveland. So it's just staying focused on the rotation. You go from having one guy to, you go from being extremely thin on the wing to arguably having two very good wing players as far as role players go on the Cavs, which is a huge relief.
Yeah, I would go to that point, though. I would now say that the Cavs are weaker in ball handlers. So you kind of took one of the points of depth for them and kind of flattened it out across the board. The depth is now gone from like having an abundance of ball handling guards to now you're kind of putting all your eggs into the Mobley ball handling basket, thinking that Ty Jerome is going to be a playoff player. I think this was also kind of a bet on Jalen Tyson because that is one of his strengths as well. I don't think I'm not saying that Jalen Tyson's going to be a postseason player for the Cavs, but I think long-term I think Caris LeVert is kind of what they envision Tyson's role to be down the road.
Yeah, I've seen people talk about that. I think that Tyson's still best off the ball. And I feel like Kenny just doesn't trust Tyson the way that
I don't think Tyson's ready yet.
I mean, I don't think he's like ready to be like into rotation when they're fully healthy, but I think he's he's been ready to get minutes over like Niang. Like I think we
in that scenario,
yeah. So like I don't know why he doesn't like. It's weird because Kenny plays like 10 guys, so he's always gonna like play 10 guys no matter what. But then he's also like, well, I'm gonna play 10 guys, but it's definitely not gonna be Jalen Tyson unless like everyone else is like gone. So
I know Craig Porter Jr. had a great night, but the fact that Craig Porter Jr. is also earning minutes over Jalen Tyson is a little confusing to me as well.
Yeah, let's save the Tyson discussion for a second. I do still think like to hit on what Corey was saying, I still don't think ball handling is really something that this Cavs team is going to be missing. I think Ty Jerome and Max Strus coming off your bench is going to be more than enough, but trading some of that ball handling depth, like I don't know. I just feel like when you looked at this team, we have so many ball handling guards and such a huge gap on the wing that's why I'm completely okay. We only lost one guy, really. We only lost one playoff rotational player to pick up Hunter, and I think it was an upgrade in that term. So my overall grade for this trade, I thought about giving it an A+. Jackson talked me down in the Fear the Sword grade. So he talked me out of the A+. So I gave it an A.
It has to be like a Luka.
You could easily get me to an A+ for this, but I'm going to give it an A. Corey, Jackson, we'll start with Corey. What would you give this trade overall? And sorry, real quick, just again, because we mentioned Jalen Tyson, you managed to keep Jalen Tyson and the 2031 first-round pick, which I think was huge because we all assumed you'd probably be giving up one, if not both of them, for a move like this.
Yeah, keeping that in mind in a similar way to like Tony's article, which is on Fear the Sword, which if you haven't read it yet, please do. I give it a B+ because I'm keeping the price in mind because I don't love Hunter on paper necessarily, but the fact that we kept basically all the assets we have, which is something that Nico Harrison could never. He'd be dumbfounded to see this trade on paper. So this is a huge win for Kobe Altman, a huge win for the Cavs. I think it's something though that the grade could easily change when we kind of see the actual fit of Hunter. But hypothetical Hunter, this is a B+.
I'd go B+ too. I mean, I've been pretty negative, but I mean, the Cavs have needed somebody who is 6'8" and can shoot the ball for a long time, and you do have that now. I do think that it's easy to gloss over Hunter's issues when you're talking about like, oh, somebody who's like a near 40% 3-point shooter and he's 6'8". Like, this is great. So I do want to kind of point that out. And, if Ty Jerome, this trade honestly comes out of Ty Jerome. if Ty Jerome is good, this
Why
is
do
an
we?
A.
What about Max
Because
Strus though? Why does it
Max
all come down
Strus-
to Jerome?
okay,
Max Strus is your sixth
Is
man.
Max
He's your best.
Strus? Max
He's your
Strus is
ball
not
handler off
taking
the bench.
anybody off the dribble. He's not the ball
Yes,
handler off the bench.
He's a better. He's a
like,
really good playmaker. We've seen him with
yes,
Mobley
he's
last
different.
year.
It's very different being
in
like
the
a
playoffs.
tertiary
You don't
playmaker.
need
What are
to
they going to do?
play. You in the playoffs, it's Garland or Mitchell on
they-
the floor at all times, and Max Strus is your backup too.
Like,
I think that's fine by me if you're healthy.
Are they going to be running? Are they going to be running like pick and rolls with Max Strus as the only ball handler on the floor? You can run it as like the second side playmaker.
Mitchell and Garland are going to be on the floor for basically 48 minutes in the playoffs.
Well, then they should have just traded
not,
Ty Jerome.
Will be out there. Well, no, Ty Jerome's good. Ty Jerome is still a good backup guard.
It comes down a lot more to Ty Jerome than you're giving it credit for.
I think it comes down to Max Strus as your sixth man, and Ty Jerome's probably
Mobley,
the eighth man.
Yeah, but he's your lead ball handler off the bench, though. Like that's still
going to be the regular season.
In the playoffs too, he's going to be the lead ball handler off the bench.
I
still think Strus is starting, but that's fine.
For us to know. Because that's my thing. Is I would start DeAndre Hunter. Max Strus is your sixth man. Dean Wade's the seventh man, and then Okoro or Jerome are playing, depending on the matchup in the playoffs. That would be my playoff rotation.
Not playing over Jerome.
Depends on what you need. If
really
Garland and Mitchell are playing 48 minutes and Strus is playing well, maybe you need a defender out there in Okoro. He could be the 2 or the 3.
I mean, I don't think either Garland or Mitchell are playing 48 minutes. I feel like that's just not how Kenny's going to.
He'll be playing the majority of the minutes.
More minutes. Yeah. I mean,
just to play the role of tiebreaker here, I agree with Tony's role of the lineup. I think it's going to be Hunter starting, but I also agree with Jackson that I think LeVert's ball handling is not something like it has to be Ty Jerome. I feel like they play very similarly in that sense where how they distribute the ball. Max Strus, when it really comes down to it, everyone loves to rave about Max Strus's passing. That's truly with the bigs. We're not seeing plays where Max Strus kind of sets the whole offense up similarly to how Karras would or Ty Jerome has in certain situations. The way that they distribute the ball is so different. Ty Jerome's a way more traditional guard in every sense of the word. Max Strus, it's like, hey, Max Strus has a really good rapport with the bigs off of pick and roll. That's cute. And then that's really it. You don't really see many other plays where Max Strus is kind of making passes that while LeVert would make some awful passes, he also would really read the defense well at other times. It was just whatever Karras got on that day. I don't see a way in which it's going to be a complete 1-for-1 swap of those responsibilities. They're going to have to plug in the gaps. And if Ty Jerome is not a playoff ball handler and he just gets run off the floor, then the Cavs don't have a Karras LeVert replacement.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think you need the replacement is my take, but I say we all agree to disagree here because we've all made valid points.
No
we let the comments
in Tony's world.
You don't need this team is not missing a ball handler. They've been missing a 6'8" wing, so that's my thing. You have Ty Jerome, you have Max Strus. They're going to give you enough of what Karras LeVert gave you. Yeah, well, they don't need Karras LeVert, but we'll let the comments decide.
Yeah, the comment.
Cody's gonna drop his second.
That's definitely something that
I just don't like. Listen, he was
saying,
so disastrous in the playoffs last year when he had the ball in his hands. It was so painful. I'm cool on the Karras LeVert experience.
I'm just saying you do rely a lot on Ty Jerome. Like that's just something that you're gonna have to do because they're gonna try to force the ball out of Garland and Mitchell's hands as much as possible, especially when you get playing against good teams like Boston, and if you ever made it to the finals, OKC, the Rockets, like they're going to do that. So you will need other people to do that on the team. And Max Strus is good. He's not a point guard. No one's gonna say he's a point guard.
Is also not like a complete black hole on offense either. He's averaging 19. If you're doubling Garland and DeAndre Hunter's catching it with an advantage, like I'm comfortable with that. So I don't know. To me, this trade is a home run. It's not a home run, but it's basically a home run.
Well, you said it was an A+.
Because this isn't going to make them the title favorite. They literally filled their biggest need without giving up anybody who
and that's good. That's why it's a good trade. I'm just saying that we do need to acknowledge that Ty Jerome is now infinitely more important than he was before this trade.
He is, but
or Max Strus. I guess
I probably would have trusted Jerome more than Karras LeVert in the playoffs, regardless. So that's where I was to begin with.
They play. They're very
In
different
Tony's
players.
eyes, Max Strus basically
We just
plays
argued
like
that they
Luka
play the
Doncic.
same role. Yeah.
Nobody said
All right,
Max Strus
anyway.
plays the same role. Anyway.
Well, Max Strus is going to give you, he's already your secondary ball handler, your tertiary, sorry. So, like, I just don't see why losing Caris LeVert is this huge gap in the roster.
All right.
The only thing I'll say is by referencing last season's postseason as a reason why Caris LeVert's value is not as important, you could look at all of the rest of the Cavs in that Orlando series. They all sucked. Everyone involved in that series was terrible.
Trade away Jarrett Allen. They didn't even need him to win.
Well, I didn't.
Why do we need Darius? He basically was a corpse anyway.
He wasn't really there.
Even the New York series, though, like we give Caris a lot of credit for being the only one showing up. He still played he shot 40% from the field. Everyone sucked. So again, if everyone's gonna suck, then you're screwed anyways. I don't care if Caris LeVert was the only guy who showed up and we lost in 5. Like I just don't. We needed something. It was time to pivot.
All right. Well,
this is supposed to be a unifying episode.
If it ever came down to Caris LeVert time, we weren't having a parade anyway, man. But I know I agree with what he brought to the team.
Let's just have two people on the court then, because that's all that matters.
That's not what you're doing, though. You still have DeAndre Hunter can handle the ball. He's not Caris LeVert, but it's not you just added.
We haven't
just add Doug McDermott.
The ball though. That's
he's
not
he's doing it all year in Atlanta.
He's not really. That's fine.
The Hawks are killing it right now.
Handled the ball. He just killed it in his last game with a lot of plays off the dribble. He's not like Doug McDermott or someone who just can't handle the ball at all.
Why are you attacking Doug?
Sorry, Doug. He's just the only player I could think of. no
offense, Doug. You suck.
Great catch and shoot player. Just don't want him handling the ball too much.
So he's in. So on plays where he's creating for himself at the rim, he's in the 17th percentile for creating for your own off the rim. He's in the 60th percentile in creating for himself off the dribble for threes, but 94% of his threes are assisted on. So he's in the 37th percentile overall in plays in which he's scoring on his scoring without being passed to. So he's not somebody who's really taking teams off the dribble, and he's not somebody who has a high assist percentage, and he has one of the lowest assist usage rate in the entire league. So he's not somebody who's going to be creating for others. People will be setting him up, and he's not going to be
asked to. And that's what I mean by I don't think this team was missing that. They needed someone who could play alongside Mitchell, Garland, and
we
Mobley.
Agree that. We agree. I'm just saying that could be an issue if Ty Jerome doesn't show up and then you keep yelling Max Strus.
Then you play Max Strus. That's the thing, though. It's if Ty Jerome doesn't show up, you have Max Strus. Who cares? I trust Max Strus in the playoffs.
Corey, do you remember Isaac Okoro played point guard for that one summer league run? They have him still. They have Point Okoro.
Merrill also was point guard 2 summer leagues ago.
I'm not mentioning Okoro as the ball handler, though. If Ty Jerome isn't a playoff ball handler, I think Max Strus gives you what you need there. So anyway, I think we can wrap it up.
Okay. All right.
I think we can wrap it up. I would love to hear, everyone else's takes, whether they agree with me or Jackson or Corey, or if you have a completely different take. Maybe you think Craig Porter needs to be out there. Who knows? Whatever it may be.
I was going to say that.
Don't discredit the CPJ army. We're up right now. He had the 16 points last night, man. They're coming out hiding.
Tony, no one else in my article where I said you're the number one fan rebutted and said, no, that's me.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. They recognize their leader.
I wanted
that's
to
all.
take that line out.
We're still strong.
We don't need to credit Tony when Craig actually has a good game. That's just rude.
One of the last remaining survivors of Craig Porter Island, and you wanted to erase me from history, man.
I don't want to erase you. I just want to give credit to Craig for the job that he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Craig probably deserves a little more credit.
That's what I'm saying. Yes,
Craig is spending his career night looking at Fear the Sword grades, being like, God, I hope they give me my flowers. And then see Tony
probably
Pesta.
Says, who's Tony Pesta? If Craig said after the game,
Tony
hey,
Pasta.
nobody believed in me anymore, then Corey could have said, well, actually, Tony Pesta did.
Yeah. Well, he would never say that because he knows where his day ones are. All right.
Just like you and Sam.
That's gonna do
Sam
it for this spicy episode of the Junkyard Pod. We have a healthy disagreement here, but I think overall we still think the Cavs got better. So that's the important thing, and we're gonna have to wait and see. We'll get some of this some of this will be put to the test. We'll finally get to know for sure who DeAndre
Against the
Hunter is
Wizards
in the context of this
Friday.
Cavs team. Yes. And so make sure you're following Fear the Sword on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure you're following us on playback.tv/Fear the Sword, where we'll be watching these games live. If DeAndre Hunter has a bad game, you can bet Jackson will let me hear it. If Max Strus is turning it over, Corey will let me hear it. So make sure you're following us. You can watch all that live. If you enjoyed today's episode, you'll love that. Any last
trying
words?
to make me a DeAndre Hunter hater. I'm not a DeAndre Hunter hater.
You're a
I'm
Max
just saying,
Strus hater.
I'm not a Max Strus hater. I'm just saying
he's a rationalist.
Like,
listen. There's one sports Tony that hates Max Strus, so I have to be the yin to his yang. Anthony
like Max
Lima.
Strus.
Well, no, Anthony Lima hates Max Strus. Anthony Pesta's got to stand behind Max Strus. It's just the way the Cleveland sports media works. There has to be an equal and an opposite.
We don't need to acknowledge bad radio takes. So that's what they're known for.
Before any more stray shots are taken, we're gonna wrap up this episode. All right, everyone, thank you for watching. And with all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree, go Cavs. Brian, where does Max Strus rank on your big board of best point guards?